Boyd here, and welcome back to the Sci-Fi Model Action channel. Tonight we're starting build number 1 in the series of the video buildup of the Monogram Models Classic Battlestar Galactica kit. And I wanted to show you what I'm started off doing here tonight. I'm getting ready to do some lighting on this model, and this model has some lit window ports around it here and there, and I used some of the reference on the box art that's on there, and I looked at a couple of the original episodes. This isn't all lit up like a, say, a Star Wars Super Destroyer or Superstar Destroyer or something like that, where you see hundreds of lights all over it, but it does have a good number of lights and such. And since this ship is supposed to be such a huge monster, you don't want to have really large windows in this, otherwise it's going to go way out of scale. So what I've started to do here tonight is using this really small drill bit. I can actually tell you what size it is here. It's a 1/32 of an inch bit. I've gone around and started putting my windows in just kind of roughly here and there, and when you do this in such a small scale, in such a small hole, you'll find that drilling into the plastic, you're going to get a little bit of flash on those holes, and you don't want to make those holes too much bigger and keep running the drill bit in and out of that, or you're going to just make the hole too big. So one of the things that I like to do is I'm using this this is called a pin vise. It's just a handheld device that'll clamp onto a small drill bit basically, and you just can twist it by hand however you want to do it, and you can really have precise control over it. What I'm doing now is going on the inside of the model, and everywhere that I've drilled the tiny hole there for the window ports on the outside, I want to make sure that I'm getting as wide angle as possible as light to come into that. The smaller the window that you have, or the smaller the hole that you have there, the harder time you have getting light to penetrate that when you put your LEDs around it. If it's not sitting almost straight out the window, from the outside you'll only pick up the light from a certain angle or whatever. So I'm sure a lot of you guys maybe experienced that before with trying to light some of these models. So a little trick that I figured out is that you go into the back side here, and I've stepped up one drill bit size initially here, which is now I'm up to the 3/64 of an inch bit, and I'm going carefully along each one of these holes and just countersinking it a little bit. I'm not going all the way through. I'm just going into each hole, maybe turning it 1 or 2 times, and not only am I cleaning that excess plastic off on the inside from drilling, but I'm making the hole slightly larger so that light can come in from more angles theoretically, and we'll get a nicer, cleaner looking, even lighting once we're done doing all this. I'm going to use this next size bit, and if I think it looks cleaned up enough, I'll probably stay with that, but I have the option of going up one more size. I'll just go back into the same hole and carefully ream it out a couple turns on each one, and we'll get that hole to where we like it. So I'll keep on filming here a little bit and turn the overhead light on. I use my little shop magnifying light here to get really close and precise on these. So I'll just go through and do a couple of these so you can see what I'm doing here, and just make sure I get the right angle. And I'm working on this front section here, and I've got to get focused on my light here. Okay, so I'm just going up to this hole, and I'm just basically laying the bit in there and making about a turn or 2 turns there. And I'm sure you're too far away to see that in the camera, but it's taken all that flash that's been built up from the drilling with that tiny bit, and just taken that right out of there, and it's made the hole quite a bit bigger. You can actually see it in the magnifying glass here that it's actually countersunk, and it's going to give me a lot better opportunity to get light in there from the back side. But on the front side, the part of the model you're actually going to see, the window ports are still going to look really nice and tiny, like we want them to try to keep them in scale. Even these at that 1/32 of an inch is just a very thin drill bit. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Even those lights on a ship that's supposed to be this big might be just slightly too large of scale, but we're going to get as close as we can. And again, I'm just going around and giving this 1 or 2 turns at first, and then if it's not enough, I'll give it a couple more. I'm just really, once I see that big piece of flash drop off of there, that's when I know I've got the hole reamed out pretty good. And I'll get this out of the way here. It's banging on and making a bunch of racket. I'm sure it's driving you guys nuts. Okay, so we've got just kind of working our way around here. Like I said, you want to make sure you don't go too far, don't go through where that's gonna you're gonna have to go back and putty up that hole, or call it a bay window, I guess. So You can see what I'm doing here, just going around doing these. I'm not going to waste the video on going and doing every single one of these and bore you guys to death, but I'm just going to keep doing these, and when I get to the point where I've got them cleaned up, I'll come back and give you an update on that, and we'll show you a little bit of lighting source behind these so you can get an idea of what you can expect the lighting to start to look like on this. So we'll be back with that in just a little bit. I'll keep on doing these holes. Okay guys, so it's been a little while here, and I've finished cleaning up all my holes on the inside with my little pin vise here. And what I've done is I've made, if you want to call it a chamfer, or just I've kind of opened up these holes and just given them a nice bevel all the way across. And what I'll do is I did a few on the bottom side here too. I'll put some light on this for you so you can see how nice those windows are going to come through for us. And then I'll just put some LED tape in here along these little areas, and some canopy glue in those holes, and let that dry, and then that's going to come through really nice. And up here at the front we can see the same thing. Hopefully I'm getting some light in here for you. We got those nice group of windows. Those were kind of a big cluster of windows there at the front, and then we have some back further along here on the top of the decks and things like that. And then I did some along the sides here. I did some of them in a little bit different sizes just to give some variance in the way they look. And there's, on the box art, there's certain patterns to some, and then there are a few of them that are on there just kind of at random, so that's going to give it a little bit of life. What I've got to do next is start figuring out what I want to do with the what kind of lighting I want to do on the Viper launch ports. I'm thinking about opening up the little louvers on the side there, and so I can have some red LED lighting in there kind of shining out, and you'll be able to see that from the open ends on each end of the launch bays. What I'm going to do now is head over to the paint spraying area, and we'll get some light blocking paint on the inside of this, and we'll go through that right now. Okay everybody, well I've moved over to the painting area here, and I've got a new can of 2-in-1 black primer, and this is a flat black, so it's going to dry really fast. Now what I'm going to do is put a really light coat of this on each part here, and then I'm going to dry it with my little heat gun, so it may get a little bit noisy here. I apologize for that. Just wanted to show you how we're going to lay this down. And I've got to turn my little ventilation on here, so it's going to be a little bit noisy. Here we go. Okay, then I have the heat gun on here for a second, so I apologize for the noise. Like I said, I'm just going to hit this real quick, and it'll really dry fast. I'm just putting really light coats on it. And then I'll have to turn the part around here to make sure that I've got both sides of it. If you can see that gloss just disappearing right away with a little bit of heat. I'm not getting it right on top of it, just maybe about 5 or 6 inches away. As it dries, you can see where you're a little bit thin on your coat here too. All right. Instead of waiting for a few hours, these are ready to go. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come back and use, I've got some white, flat white primer. I'm going to come back and lay down our light reflecting coat. This is just to block the light from passing through the plastic when we put our bright LEDs in here. So that's got that taken care of. Now we want to bounce this light around on the inside of this model and get a lot of saturation in there. So I'll be spraying down a coat of flat white on this next. Be right back with that. Alrighty then, well, so here we have our white, flat white 2-in-1 primer. The same thing. 2-in-1 means it's basically a fill and a coating, so it's a thicker type primer. It's what I prefer to use. But again, you don't want to go back and put this on so thick that you're starting to fill in our little real tiny window ports either and start blocking those. That's why I was doing it very thin and then drying it so we don't have a chance for any of that paint to run inside of those holes. That's one thing you can't stress enough when painting. Just do thin coats and make sure you're drying in between. That'll help you from getting bleed through on your taping or anything like that too that you're doing on the outside of the model. You're doing fine detail painting, and masking things off, or you want nice straight lines and things like that. It's all, the key to that is doing very light coats and not letting it pile up on there to where it starts to run. So, okay, with that said, we're going to go and start making sure our can is ready here, and it looks like it's ready to go. So I'll turn on the ventilation again, and we're going to start laying down some white in this. Like I said, if you look at this, I'm not sure if it's showing for you on the camera, but you can literally see the gloss just disappear right off of it when you pass over it with this heat. And you can see, probably start seeing how nice our windows are coming through, nice and clean, no paint bleeding over into them, so the LEDs are going to go through those real nice, especially once you put your crystal clear or your canopy glue or whatever you use, acrylic, that picks up the light too. That draws the light to it, so as long as you got a nice clean open hole like that, you're going to get a nice light, even lighting effect from it from the outside, and in a good viewing angle, so you can move around and a little bit and still pick up that source of light. Okay, well, that's looking pretty good. Now we'll take it back over to the bench and have a look and see how all the windows are still looking after we do that. Then it's time to start giving this a little light scuff down with some 600 and coat the outside with some of my plastic, which is a paint adhesion promoter, and then we'll be ready to paint the outside of this hull next. See you back over the bench. Alright everybody, well here I have my little Dremel stylus tool set up with a little accessory here that has a small grinding tip on the end of it, and I've got this thing set up at about number 5 on the speed, and I'm going to start working my way into this from the back side first. I'm going to basically just try to stay in the very middle and just get a basic hole started in each one here, and then working from this side, start going in there. And I have a smaller one that I can use too when I start getting close to the edges here. There's some little detail areas right around the edges here that I don't want to grind that out of there, and I want to keep a nice kind of a square shapes to some of those areas that are in there. It's going to be kind of tough on some of these because they're really getting kind of close with these little ribs that are in here, but hopefully I can get a decent hole worked in there, and then might have to finish off the rest with a little hand file or something. But let's go ahead and get started on that. And again, I'm just going to stay right in the middle. I'm just kind of making a hole and then kind of connecting the dots here, like you've seen me do on some of the other builds I've done where I'm cutting out the flux chiller grills on some of the cells or something like that. Alright, so we have made some good progress on this little part so far. I finished doing my rough cut, and you can see I kind of took it kind of close to the edges there on these cuts here without getting into the little details that are in there, and then I switched to this smaller bit, which lets me be a lot more precise, and I've started working this first one here at the end, and you can see it's almost all cleaned up already. And so I'm just kind of going through there and just working my way right up to the edges, and I'm going to try to get a rough shape that's symmetrical or similar on all these. It's a little bit tricky because there's these little ribs that are sticking up in there, and you've got to kind of come right up to that wall there and not go past it. Okay, I'm very happy with that one. Let's clean it up again here a little bit in the back. Just getting that, lightly taking my hobby knife here and just kind of working that ring off there. And I'll have to go over this with a little bit of sandpaper and a file to really clean it up. Okay, those two ports there, if you can see them, they're looking really nice. There's a couple little burrs hanging on in there. They're just little pieces of plastic fuzz. Like I said, I'll get rid of those when I sand it and everything, but you get the general idea. I'm going to be going through and doing the rest of these. So, okay, well that's going to do it for this segment on the part 1 of the Galactica buildup. When we come back in part 2, we're going to start doing our outside painting of the hull, and we're going to start modifying those Viper launch bays for some lighting. And then we're going to start test fitting all the parts and seeing how the model is going to look and where we're going to need to do light blocking and things like that. and then we'll go from there, and we'll start figuring out where we're going to place all of our LEDs and get that all lit up nice and evenly. So I'll see you guys on the next video, and until then everyone, happy modeling you guys, and take care out there.